Welcome to CEO Insights Asia Executive Series, Principles of Scaling. Welcome to CEO Insights Asia Executive Series, Principles of Scaling. Is the strongest enterprise are those that constantly evolve. It's no longer the game of how big you are, but now the game is how big your ecosystem is.
Now, but I think this really speaks volume why we're attracted to hang out with one another. Like for example, in CEO Insights Asia, I really like spending time there because I'm surrounded with like-minded people. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to CEO Insights Asia Executive Series, Principles of Scaling. I am Chris, the founder and CEO of Morningstar Network Corporation, and today's topic is about the devil in details. Ayan. Here, the key objective is to have 3 practices at the end of the session to make you more attentive to details. Just a quick reminder why we do this every Friday at 10 a.m. is we want to install DNA principles that scale organizations. So to all our participants here in Zoom and those who are watching in Facebook, we want you to come here and join the fun, mas interactive dito. And what we want to accomplish is that we want you to gain or get one insight, even just one insight, that you can immediately apply and execute in your organization, in your day-to-day operations. And that's the reason why we do this every Friday at 10 a.m. So the focus for this month is being methodical, where we manifest an insatiable drive to be better. And we have talked about obsessing in performance. We already talked about immersing in details. And we'll talk about living in ideas in the entire month. So a quick overview. The topics that we have tackled this month, on week 1, we learned about system of systems, where we learned about simplifying the system is really the key in running an organization. In week 2, we learned about the checklist CEO, and we have learned why it's not enough to have it in our mind, but we have to write it down. And week 3, last week, we invited Mr. Jason De La Rosa to handle the topic Walk the Talk, where he talked about not just innovating products, but also innovating the management system and customer experience. And today, for this week, we are on week number 4. Surfa is back. He will be the one who will talk about the devil in details. Ayan. So a few announcements before we start. We have circle meetings happening every Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Where we have intensive CEOs leadership training and we share business practices and insights. So for this Tuesday, last Tuesday, Comizen CEO Eman Bautista III was the one who facilitated the circle meeting. And here you can see other circle multipliers. If any one of you want to join any of the circle meeting, please sign up to the link that Carrie will send on the chat box. Ayan. Madami dyan. Pili kayo. Marami kayong matututunan dyan. Also, announcement, another new circle birthed. Sir Jobs is the one facilitating the new circle. So if you want to join, not just to learn business practices, but to talk to a model, ayan, sali kayo dyan. Sign up lang kayo, huwag kayong mahiya. Okay, ayan pa lang naman ang announcement. So now it's the time, tawagin na natin ang phantom, no? Phantom of the CEOs, yung someone na lagi nag-a-appear sa dreams, at lagi mapapabalikwas ka, nagawa ko na ba ang kailangan kong gawin sa aking organization? The things that you need to improve. He's the CEO's whisperer, kumbaga. He's the executive advisory of CEO Insights Asia. I'm honored to introduce to you our mentor and speaker for today, Sir Fa. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, for the 700,000 participants natin ngayon. Welcome to CEO Insights Asia's Executive Series. So pag-uusapan natin is the devil in details. Na-miss ko kayo. Salamat ha. Thank you, Chris, CEO of MStarNet. The team is here. Yan, sige. So, agenda muna tayo. Ano bang pag-uusapan natin in the next hour or so? Shout out, andito si Coach Ayet. Ayan, sige. So,
Yoo-hoo, thank
Ayet,
you.
ito ang
Good morning.
una-una tatanungin sa conversation starter natin. So, we'll always start with an engagement with the participants. So, mga nanonood sa Facebook, maraming salamat. But please, if you can join us dito sa Zoom, mas maganda. Ayan. So, after the conversation on a quick question, we'll define what we mean when we say someone is attentive to detail or someone is detail-oriented. Then we'll throw in some facts and figures. I'll do a personal case study kasi gusto natin case study ang sarili ko. And then we'll talk about why attention to detail matters. And then we'll get practical. Yan. So that's the things that we're going to talk about in the coming hour. But before that, I want to create a shout-out muna sa aking idol, Tito Jason De La Rosa, the founding partner of CEOInsight Asia, partner natin Bounce Back PH, for covering for me last week. No, so for those who weren't here, I celebrated with my wife our 11th year together, 2011 March 18, when our broadcast to, no data si Mami. When our lips first meet, yon, di ba? Censored. So after that, we were together for 4 years. We got married, and then now with a 5-year-old daughter, Ate Johan, and a 5-month-old baby Ellie, we're celebrated last Friday. So ayan, di ba? Ang blueberry cheesecake na tradition natin. Nag-umpisa yan sa Hong Kong. Coffee ko brown, yan. Tsaka blueberry cheesecake sa Hong Kong. Doon sa bumaba lang kami sa hotel noon. Tapos may bakery lang talaga ron. Nakakita ko ng blueberry cheesecake. It has been a tradition of ours ever since. So, nag-Pico de Loro yan, nag-Tagaytay Highlands yan, nag-Korea na yan, and nag-Japan na rin yan. Hopefully, as what's supposed to be in 2020 in Taiwan, ay alam na natin kung ano nangyari. Diba? Tapos, we went to the place. Ganda dito, somewhere in near lang sa amin kasi we can travel so far. Ganda ng hacienda pala. May hacienda pala rito malapit sa amin. Fatima. Yan. So it's owned by a general. So ang ganda ng venue, ang ganda ng cloud, di ba? Ang ganda ng kasama mo. Tapos yung ambag mo lang, ikapal ng mukha. So that was us. Thank you so much for allowing us to take a break and a breather. And we really did enjoy this time together. Okay. So conversation starter na tayo. Coach Ayet, ikaw ang first sasagot nito. So the question is, what comes to your mind when you hear the phrase, the devil is in the details? Sige,
Okay, yes. Oo, so wala muna akong video kasi parang mas formal lang look ko dito sa picture ko. Okay, good morning everyone and thank you for inviting me for this conversation starter. I'm not sure if a lot of you or how many of you have heard about Devil Wears Prada movie.
Of course, Meryl Streep.
Yan, diba? Sino ang hindi kakabahan kapag ang isang fa ang nasa harap nila, diba? Naarala ko doon si Meryl Streep, parang fa. So, in terms of, just because I have been, I experienced corporate life and for the most part of my life in corporate, I've been attending to details. So, if, just to have an intro of myself, medyo, all of my life, if not most of the years that I've spent, I'm into quality control. And I am also in continuous improvement. Yung background ko is data analytics and Six Sigma. So kung hindi pa ba naman detailed, ang tawag mo dyan, hindi ko na alam, diba? Okay. So, nung lumipat ako dito sa aming family business, it's really still into details because we are an accounting firm. And diba? So, tapos hindi lang yon pa. Hindi lang yon. Hindi pa masyadong details yan, diba? Gusto namin sa compliance.
Ayun!
And, diba? So, sobrang calibrated ako in terms of the mission and vision. And there is really, sobrang kahit konti lang, mainit yung mga mata ko sa, what's your story about? Can you give me the backbone of that story? Kasi hindi pwedeng may mamimiss ka eh. And it's easy. It's easy to actually storytell to your people or even to yourself na hindi, we're doing okay. But in actuality, Pwedeng glitch lang siya sa system, di ba? Pwedeng, okay, we are at an all-time high at the moment. Pero the question is, how do you sustain? So, if you're not into details, medyo, meron kang pwedeng ma-miss. And when I hear this phrase, it's really more of, it is how you want yourself presented, especially if you are in front of an investor. And medyo equal ito sa integrity. This is what I have in mind, and everybody. We can all have stories, but we can go straight to the facts as well. So, diba, parang what's using you? Diba? What's using you? Where are you coming from? Pero, to cut the story short, and we as CEOs, we wanted na walang or less, if I may, wala naman sigurong minor dito, no? If I may, we stop the BS right there. Tapos we go straight to the ball game, diba? Tapos, when you, stand your ground, may mali ka di mali. Di kung may mali, di ayusin. Ganun lang. So, okay na ba? Tapos na ba yung airtime ko?
Okay na yun.
Happy anib pala. Salamat guys.
Busog na kami. Pwede na tayong mag-close. Ayos na yun.
Sorry naman.
But it's good. Thank you. Sige, Coach Ayet, you pick the next one. Isa pa.
Okay. Siguro yung yung nag-hi sa akin. Ayan. Sino ba yung una nag-hi sa akin? Ayun, si BK. If you're here, good morning.
Yan, magandang kwento ng niyan. Devil in details niyan. Sir, good morning. Pwede ka ba?
Good morning.
Yan.
Good morning. Ayun, so what comes to your mind when you hear the phrase, the devil is in the details? Ang buo pa sa isip ko dito is, yung even the small things, kailangan maingat ka. Example, isa sa mga problems namin to sa accounting. Actually, hindi accounting, sorry. The whole aspect of finance, accounting, procurement, and even logistics, no? We believe that kailangan namin, we call it, nakuha namin sa good to great, yung squiggly things. Na kahit pangit yung data, kailangan mo ipakita yan sa amin Kahit alam mong sisimangot kami ni Ses, pakita mo sa amin yung data. Bakit? Kasi kapag bulag kami sa data, hindi kami makakapag-create ng data-driven decisions.
Yes.
And yun talaga kunwari merong minor mistake sa data. Apektado yung decision mo The more na updated ka, the more na mas aware ka sa kung ano nangyayari sa business, even to the smallest detail, mas mabilis ka makakapag-pivot. Kasi actually nakuha ko to dun sa sa isang partner natin sa Sellers Hub. Kasi sabi niya na dalawa lang yung way on how to solve problems. Pwede ka maging reactive, pwede ka maging predictive. Piliin mo na lang kung ano yung trip mo. Yung sabi niya sa akin Sabi niya, Bigay, kung trip mo maging bombero, okay lang.
Fire
na lang ito lang uniform next na balik ko dito. Pero that's it. Anyway, thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Mamayat.
Sige. Okay na. Parang di na ako talaga kailangan dito. Busog na tayo So I'll just add a few commentaries lang dun sa mga sinabi nila. Devil is in detail. So let's create first a background of the sources of the inspiration of this deck. No? Yan, ito yung mga books na nabasa natin that inspired us to come up with this session. Insane is Simple by Ken Segall. So the obsession that drives Apple success, I guess alam naman natin when it comes to SJ, si Steve Jobs, is very keen on details. And so si Ken Segall is the guy who named the iMac back in the 97. So he's accredited for that. And Decoding Greatness, Ron Friedman. The funny thing is, I read books, usually ng mga written by authors who became professors of Harvard, of Stanford. And pagka nakita ko yung pangalan nila, hanapin ko lang yung other books nila. So yun yung mga binabasa ko. To my detriment, kasi ang dami palang magandang books. Like Ron Friedman is not well known compared to Jim Collins or Jerry Porras. But there are a lot of good books. So Decoding Greatness is one book I recommend you to read. Hindi man masyadong kilala kagaya nila Ram Charan, nila Gary Hamel, yung authors. This one book that you want to read. Okay. So with that, let's define what we mean when we say someone is attentive to detail or someone is detail-oriented. Ito yung pinakamagandang definition na nakuha ko. It's the thoroughness in accomplishing a task through concern. May care. Di ba? May concern for all. Not some, not many, not few, not almost all, but all the areas involved. And paki-chat naman yung highlighted and underlined words. Yan, paki-chat para tayo, may interaction tayo. Yan, no matter how small. Detail-oriented or attention to detail is about the thoroughness. Yung talagang pulido tayo in accomplishing a task through concern, may care. That's why solid tayong magtrabaho. That's why we're very keen. It's because we care. And not just for some, not just for many, but for all aspects, no matter how small it is. You know? So let's give a bit of background on the word, the devil in details. And I'm gonna ask you, if you've been attentive sa ating talaga, I'm gonna test your attention to details capability later. So a quick background. Saan ba galing tong idiom na to? Saan ba galing tong saying na to, no? Actually, it's not the correct idiom, the devil is in the details. It was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. I don't know. Please, kayo na lang kung kilala nyo siya. Paki-pronounce ang maayos yung pangalan niya. But he's a German-American architect. And, malapit na mag-birthday, no? March 27. He was the guy who was credited for the phrase, God is in the details. And he was saying na be truthful in all aspects. Kasi he's an architect. Even in the smallest things, you have to be truthful. Kasi you have to be you're building something, diba? So you have to be in all honesty true to what you're saying or what you're doing because it's an infrastructure yung ginagawa mo, no? And if you do not you ignore the details, it's going to be detrimental for people who will use that. And then years later, it's been reversed na. So it's the devil in details is a derivative of that, no? The devil in details actually means the particulars, even if they seem insignificant, can end up causing problems. That is, if they're not taken into account. Kaya wag tayong mga galit sa mga accounting firms, ayan, sa mga operational excellence or audit, kasi it's for our protection. Sabi nga ni BK, di ba? Prevention instead of correction. Siguro I'll say something about that later. But this is the devil in the details phrase now. Mas gusto ko yung second one. Problems on large projects can often be attributed to pakisulat, pakichat, yung yung attributed to what daw? Kindly chat. Ayan. Small mistakes that were overlooked. Maliit na pagkakamali na pinalampas cause something that is at certain cases catastrophic to the situation. And in our book, I want to pivot a bit now sa principles kami ni Bianca. We co-authored a book entitled Principles. If you want a copy, just message me. And we invited contributing authors doon. No? So we invited Amanda Perez. I hope she's here. Amanda Perez Garcia. She's the founder of Shopets. And she wrote about the execution part. And medyo morbid tong babae to kasi she's fascinated with crashes, yung documentary of crashes. Diba? Pastora pala yan, no? Anyway, so she's fascinated with crashes in documentary. And she wrote in that book yung story about an Alaska airline. And what happened was, there was a crash, and when they did the autopsy of that plane crash, they discovered that it was because someone forgot to lubricate a screw. Hindi na lubricate yon, natanggal yung screw. It was containing or holding the thing that balances the airplane mid-air. And because natanggal yon, the plane went off balance mid-air and it crashed. And because of that, we now have an inside conversation. Pag nag-uusap kami, we call it tightening the screws. And so it means na, okay, let's tighten the screws. Let's focus a bit on the nitty-gritty of the situation. Kasi it can be catastrophic in other situations. Yung small mistakes, maybe that's why it's overlooked. Maliit lang naman which is a big no-no. No? Your CEO, as Coach Ayes has mentioned, as Sir BK has mentioned, when you're CEO, nothing is too small or too insignificant when it's all about the numbers, yung finances. No? Okay, so it's all about tightening the screw. Yan na yung mga inside conversation namin ni Amanda. Kudos sa kanya. And while I was reflecting on that, I came across this one, Air Mobility Command. It caught my attention. Attention to detail, difference between life and death. And it was written by an airman. So it's one thing researching it, it's another thing that someone actually wrote it, was there. And we're not going to read the entire thing. I just highlighted yung mga few things na gusto ko. Sabi niya rito, attention to detail is one aspect that helps ensure excellence in all we do. All airmen must have impeccable attention. I love the word impeccable. Impeccable attention to detail to prevent catastrophic consequences. And he knows what he's talking about, diba? Which some service members have seen. Not heard, not read. They've actually seen during their careers. It could mean the difference between life and death in certain career fields. Sabi niya rito, inattention to detail by an aircraft maintainer could mean the loss of an aircraft and by extension, aircrew members' lives. It's very possible for a mechanic to go to work on an aircraft and forget a simple bolt or screw that could mean that can make a world of difference. The Air Force could lose an aircraft and lives if the same bolt or screw is vital for flight, as mentioned by Amanda doon sa ating ebook na principles. No? I think ito yung nabasa niya nung niya yun pinapanood niya yung documentary ni research niya. So it's very important that we are very keen on details, particularly sa finance side. Diba? Kasi kadalasan, yan ang pag entrepreneur, benta. Diba? Di bali nang hindi profitable, basta makabenta. Sometimes you have to be keen on details, particularly doon sa side ng profitability when we're starting. Okay? So it's too morbid, di ba? Baka how can we apply this in our day-to-day life? Doon na lang tayo sa mga kontrata. If you're buying condo, you're buying a car, di ba? You've heard the phrase, read the fine print. Does that mean? Basahin natin yung kontrata. Di ba? Kahit pa mahaba yun. Kasi you're gonna give money di ba? Bibili ka sa sasakyan, magkano ba sa sasakyan? Mga milyon, sabihin na natin, or more than 500,000. You're gonna give that and then you just gloss over the contract? Mahirap yun. Diba? Tapos pagka nagkaroon ng problema, hindi pala insured yung condo mo o yung bahay mo, tapos nagka-problema, hindi ko alam na ganun pala yun. Ba't hindi mo binasa? It's not gonna fly. Diba? We gave you the contract, it's there, you could have asked questions, you could have refined it, but you didn't. And you can't blame others, but you look in the mirror and say, it's on you. Now, as CEO, it goes the same way. The principle says the same. Diba? We can say, hindi ko alam to, and so on and so forth. Yeah, sure, maybe the nitty-gritties, and mamaya pag-usapan natin how to differentiate, but at least you have a sense of an idea that something is happening na ganito. Right? Okay. So let's throw in some facts and figures about attention to detail. So the top 3 reasons why there are mistakes na nangyayari, small mistakes that happen. Number 1, haste or being rushed. Mabilisan. Diba? Speed over accuracy. I don't believe in that. I would always go for speed and accuracy. And this is very important. Sana nandito si Coach Shardy mentioned team replay daw siya or Facebook Live. But I hope he's watching. Kasi ang gusto ko sabihin dito is sometimes we want to, when you're scaling, this was one of our conversations, you have to have that certain understanding that scaling means growing fast when you must and growing slow when you can. Because slow is smooth is fast. When you're in a startup, it's exciting, lalo na when you're growing. But you have to be able to have that certain discipline to understand that not all scaling isn't about growing lang. It's about pacing, Para ka nagda-drive, ang bilis mo, tapos pakurba, paliko. Diba? Magmi-minor at magmi-minor ka talaga dyan unless magka-crash yung gusto mo. No? So that's what we say. You can't build something, lalo na in the work that we do, we're building the DNA, we're building the foundation. Because here's what I believe, and I've seen this 1,000 times. You can't build a great company out of flawed foundation. You have to get the foundation right. And it's a bit slow. Kasi you're building it for the long term. That's why some people mistake na parang, we don't, it's all about selling ngayon. It's all about building and growing. Yeah, but, if you want to build to last, then we have to do this. If not, okay lang naman. You're built for exit. Okay lang naman yon, di ba? Go, di ba? Grow. So that's the idea, right? The second is lack of education. Kasi nga, minadali di ba? Mabilisan, so hindi na train na maigi. There's the cost of it. And last but not the least is apathy. They don't care. I'm not here about the mission. I'm just here about the money. Yun lang naman. And which is okay. Again, it's just that you're not going to be happy here at this community kasi we're all about building something that really matters to us. So if you're just looking for a job, maraming company dyan. I can recommend it to some. But if you're looking to build something great, welcome to CEO Insights community, the ecosystem. So you have to care, So those are the three reasons. They rushed, mabilisan, or they weren't trained enough because gusto nga mabilisan yung resulta. And third is they don't care. What for? Diba? Pwede na yan. Mahirap. Ay, nako, asa yung fish oil ko? Ayoko na mga ganyan So, can employees learn to be much more detail-oriented? They were asked, the executives were asked, sabi niya, 81% says, yes, they can learn. And then 17% says no, 2%, not sure, 17%. And 2% says no. But the point is that the large majority are saying, yes, it can be learned. Now, ano yung top 4 negative effects according to executives that were asked in this survey? Sabi niya, 27% decreased product quality. Obviously, di ba? We're not attentive to detail, magsasuffer yung quality ng product. Di ba? So, that's one of the negative outcome because of inattention to detail or low attention to detail. The next one is decreased productivity. Why? Kasi you have to do it again. Or you'll spend the time communicating to the customer, explaining, diba? Instead of us strategizing for how to get better and improve, we're spending our time pacifying a customer. Sayang yung oras. Bakit? Kasi, diba, palpak Ganon. So, uulitin natin siya. And the third one is decreased employee morale. Bakit? Kasi what? I have to do it again because someone didn't focus on the details, didn't get their job right? Come on. Sino ba naman ang gaganahan nun, di ba? Nauulitin na naman namin to. It's a waste of my time because someone else didn't do what they're supposed to do. And last but not the least, there's decrease in customer service quality. Diba? So it's a cycle. No? It slowly kills companies because of inattention to detail. And if I will share, about I think it was 4 years ago, I was talking to an HR person. She was asking me, what do you think are the source of why companies largely why do they fail? And I'm a simple guy. I just shared to her na the main reason why many companies fail is because ultimately someone somewhere in the organization didn't do what they're supposed to do at the given time, at the expected output. That's it. It's because someone didn't do what they're supposed to do. So ang mangyayari, if you're not gonna do your job, someone will do your job. Diba? So may gagawa nun. Ang problema, okay lang naman, sasaluhin. Diba? Paano yung trabaho niya? So may masasalo rin nun. And it's a ripple effect, it's a domino effect. And that's why there's a breakdown in execution. And, you keep doing that in the long term, eventually, and then you keep growing, it will implode. So that's a reason why many companies fail. Okay, so let's do a case study. Favorite natin to. What's in a name? Ayan. Diba? Gustong-gusto ko to kasi ang pangalan ko, my full name is Florentino A. Hernando. I know it doesn't smell good, but it's my name. Yan ang binigay sa akin ng nanay ko. And I'm the third, by the way. My lolo, my uncle, pero hindi ko na sinama sa sa pangalan ng birth certificate. So Florentino A. Hernando. And I hate it. At first, it was amusing when people don't get my name. Federico. Federico. Diba? Gerardo. Hernandez. Fernando, like, really? You know, at first it was amusing, but eventually it became insulting. Kasi parang that's my name eh, you may not like it, but it is my name. I may not like it, but it is my name. So I have to embrace that. And nakakainis yun, no? And one of the, isa na naman tayo, yung SSS ko, yung government talaga. Anyway, mali yung pangalan ko sa SSS ko, di ba? Again, not all, di ba? Not all. Yung mga nakakatrabaho ko lang. Parang ako na ata talaga may problema eh. Okay, so they didn't get my name right. Di ba? Middle initial ko is E. Di ba? Florentino. So I have to go back and fix it. Just because someone made the mistake. And back then, when I was trying to fix that, it was 2009, 10. I was still an employee. So it means I have to get birth certificate. I have to take time off. Kasi wala naman nag-overtime. So ma-absent ako. Di ba? Kasi someone didn't do what they're supposed to do. I get, nabawasan yung oras ko, yung araw kong bayad sa akin. Kasi hindi nila inayos yung trabaho nila. So those things, no? Parang sa gobyerno pa naman, parang galit sila sa trabaho, galit sila sa mundo, tapos binubuhos nila sa mga customer nila, di ba? Tapos wala kang magawa kasi, di ba? Like, saan ka pupunta? Again, not all, di ba? Recorded pala ito, naka-Facebook live pa ako. Again, not all, di ba? Most, di ba? Most. Ayan. So, I love coffee. I go to Starbucks, di ba? So, my nickname, so people, di ba sa Starbucks, they get your name. Like, what's your name? This is for Ons. That's my nickname. Baka naman kasi Florentino Hernando, mahirap, di ba? Medyo hindi common, kagaya ng Brian Kenneth, yan, or Chris, di ba? So, bibigay ko Ons. So, makukuha kayong cup ko, O-N-Z. Ons, parang, makikuha kayong cup ko, O-Z. Oz? Parang, di ba? O-U-N-C-E. Ounce? Really? It's like ons. O-N-S. Ons. Diba? So those are the little things. Remember that parang the name is the sweetest song a person can hear. Diba? You're getting your name right. And so eventually I'll use my initials na lang, Fa. Fa. Siguro naman, di ba? Tapos sasabihin ko pa, Fa. F-A-H, Fa. Para makuha nila, no? Yan. So kayo na lang kalma. Sorry na. Okay. Kayo na lang maghusga, okay? Fa. Ito. Fee. Take note pre-pandemic ito. 'Di ba wala pang mask. Fee. Ito isa, bagay smile, fe. F-A-H, fe. Diba? Kaya sinusulat ko ito kagabi. High blood talaga ako rito. Okay, ito. Fa. Fa. Ayoko na. Diba? I love you, Starbucks, but you're making it hard for me to love you. So there, those are the situations I encountered pre-pandemic pa yan. Diba? So that's why I love this topic, attention to detail, because like mediocrity, I am a victim of its absence. Diba? Pag walang attention to detail, biktima ako. Diba? And it goes the same with me, no? And I'm sharing this. Hindi naman ako, I also have experiences wherein my lack of attention to detail has cost me a client. I hope you're not here, no? But I'm sorry. So I was given a lead, no? Binato sa akin, sabi niya, parang kausapin mo to. And I wasn't really into it, Apathy. So I sent an email. I didn't get the name of the person right, and I didn't get the name of the company right. So I lost. I didn't get that account. No? And it's my fault. That's why, I'm affected. I'm a victim of its absence in attention to detail. Diba? Parang what's the message? Kagaya ng sinabi ni Coach Ait kanina. What's the message that we're communicating when we get these things wrong? Now, how can I trust you? You're expecting what? Hundreds of thousands or millions of projects and engagement, and you can't get this simple thing right? Diba? So how can I trust you with that if you can't even get my name right? So that's the message we're communicating. If we don't get the names right, it's a proposal, the title, the position, ano pa ba? Spelling, grammar. So that's the reason why we have to be very keen on details. Because we are victim of its absence. On the contrary, diba, we're also benefit from its presence. And so I want to share, wala rito si Ces, sana nakikinig ka Ces, no? Si Ces of Sellers Hub. Yan. So I went there about 4 times na. First office, Yellow Bell pa, PK Roots. Diba? Talagang yung kita mo parang computer shop lang yung unang punta ko ron. No? Ngayon, pagpunta mo sa opisina nila, grabe naman. Ganda-ganda ng office niyan. May naglaro pa kami ng arcade dyan. No? And when I was invited there, may katsawang kasi kami niyan with the people I work with. Laging, pakape na lang ako. Ganyan. Sabi, ay, thank you, sir. Coffee lang tayo. Alam mo naman ako, madali akong kausap. So when I went there, sabi ko kay Ces, kape kalimutan. It's an inside joke. So I went there, inaputan ako ng venti na Starbucks. Diba? Tapos, nung ininom ko, I'm expecting brewed coffee because, when you say Starbucks, it's brewed coffee. They got me not only the name right, diba? But also caramel macchiato, which is yun lang ang iniinom ko pagka umorder ako sa Starbucks. It's always caramel macchiato. I don't do frap, I don't do others. Pag binibigyan akong brewed, sure. Pero ako orders always caramel macchiato. So sabi ko kay Ces, di ko sinabi sa'yo to Ba't mo nalaman na caramel macchiato ang iniinom? Sabi niya, ay sir, the keyword dito and that's the first time I learned of the word. Sabi niya, ay sir, in-stock ko yung page mo. Hinanap ko talaga yung iniinom mo. So, yun ang and it made a large impression on me. Obviously, di ba, I'm sharing about that here, no? So, yeah, baka hindi ka na bumalik. Salamat, Ces. I hope nakikinig ka. Saan ka man, di ba? Mahal ka namin. Nag-usap kami niyan this week. But the point is, di ba, it made a big impression on me. Na someone got the details right and even made effort, stalking my, I write things at my page, but I don't really think people read it because, like, really? Who reads that? Diba? My senseless musings and ramblings, nandun lang yun. So yeah, I appreciate that. So I benefit from its presence. So here's the quote I want for us to take home. No? This is from Louis Banta of LJMP, my former boss. Ayan. So he's a training officer and we were doing still management consulting before I went full-time in my executive advisory. So sabi niya, be careful what you tolerate because what you tolerate eventually becomes your standards. Yung mga small mistakes na pinapalampas natin, eventually, hindi na yan small mistake. Standard na yan. Kaya, tayo medyo people say, you're too, it's a small thing. Palampasin mo na. Sabi ko, ang sa akin is, maliit na nga lang hindi pa magawa. Paano pa natin ibibigay yung mas malaki-laking responsibility if we are not faithful in the small things? Yes! Kaya, di ba, napapasermon na naman ako. Anyway, so yun, that's the idea that we want to communicate for CEOs, for our customers. We want to be careful what we tolerate because eventually that becomes our standard. So now, why is it important that we're detail-oriented? Why is it important? Why attention to detail matters? I'm just going to give you quickly 3 E's. Okay? So the first one, it enhances execution. And it's all about execution. Strategy, ideas, it's a dime a dozen. Manood ka na lang ng YouTube. Madaming idea dyan. What differentiates great companies from the good ones are their discipline to execute those strategies and pivot accordingly. Their capability to execute. Now, if you're attentive to details, it enhances our ability to get things done. And once we're able to do that, it ensures excellence. At love na love natin ng excellence. Di ba? Mababawasan ng palpakacious kapag attention to detail, di ba? Attentive to detail tayo. And dahil na-ensure yung excellence, ayaw natin ng NX, not excellent. Allergic tayo dyan. Di ba? Pag na-ensure natin ng excellence, it elevates the experience of our customer, as well as obviously kay Princess, di ba? It elevated my experience and I'm bragging about her, di ba? Seller sub, di ba? So it also elevates the experience of me na naggawa, na nag-execute nun. Kasi I'm commending Princess, and di ba, everybody, CEO nga needs to be encouraged. Kaya nga may CEO circle tayo. We encourage one another. Kasi we encourage the team, di ba? And we can't give what we do not have. We cannot give motivation to them if we're not motivated. The question is, where do we get motivation? Diba? Because the buck stops at us. That's why we built the CEO circle to not only swap ideas, but encourage one another. So it elevates the experience of both parties. The customer na naka-experience ng exceptional service. At the same time, yung commendation that comes after elevates the experience of the person who executed that. So to give you an image that you can carry in your head, execution ensures excellence, and excellence elevates the experience, which then amplifies once again our capability to execute, and it's an ever-growing flywheel. Screenshot nyo na yan, carry it in your head, take this home, sa inyo na yan, right? Okay, so let's get practical. How do we become better in being attentive to details? 3 P. Yan, para mabilis matandaan. The first one is, what? Paki-type nga. Kasi lagi niyong maririnig sa akin yan. Please type it down. What's the first P? Yes, pen it down. Isulat yan. I've been the past few years, I've often found myself saying, nakalimutan ko yung sasabihin ko. May sasabihin ako, nakalimutan ko. Or I always found myself saying na, sabihin ko na to bago ko pa makalimutan. Why? Because we are bombarded with information. And the capacity of our brain to hold information is limited. Kaya sa sobrang bilis na nangyayari ngayon, mabilis na tayong, we can't absorb all information. So we have to pen it down. And it is a habit of mine. So while I'm driving or I'm sitting and watching Johan play, yan, sa mga outings na, casual lang, I'm still processing. Hindi ako normal eh. Sorry ah. So I'm still processing information. And sometimes I have an information in my head. Baka mawala. Sabihin ko kay Tidoy, Mami, may scratch ka ba dyan? Or kakalkal ako sa wallet ko, baka may resibo ako doon. Tapos manghiram ako ng ballpen sa sulat ko. Kasi makakalimutan ko yun. We have to pen it down. Write down the idea. Now, sabi nila, may phone naman eh. Diba? Isulat mo sa phone. Actually, according to the Decoding to Greatness, this is from Ron Friedman. Inside the book, there's a study by Daniel Oppenheimer. Si Daniel Oppenheimer is a UCLA professor from Princeton. And he conducted a study and found that we're far better at absorbing information we've written by hand. It's because writing is slower than typing. So mas na-absorb natin ang information natin pag sinusulat natin yon. Compared with the gadget, with the typing. Why? It's because it's slower than typing. Now, here's the key. That limitation, that slowness, forces us to think harder and require us to decide what information is essential and what we can safely include. It forces us to really think. Kasi mabagal nga magsulat. Hindi kagaya type ka lang. Plus, sa typing, it's like the finger. It's just pressing. But when you're writing, it's a hand coordination, and you're forced to really write down what you want. It forces us to think harder. And here's the key principle. We learn best when we're forced to think. Increased effort leads to deeper learning. Increase in effort leads to deeper learning, and deeper learning accelerates performance. So that's why when people work with me, they say, I'm better. I always get better when I have encounter with you. It's because I force people to think. They're learning a lot because I force them to think. And here's the evidence. So let me share. Ayan, di ba? So this is the CEO, si Chris. So this is one of our sessions. Hindi ko nilang gito. I want this to be a surprise. Ayan. So si Chris is forced to think. Ayan. Ang latest victim natin, ayan. Si RD na wala ngayon. So RD, di ba? Congratulations. So that's RD. This happened last Wednesday. Ayan. So they're forced to think. And of course, business review starter natin, ayan kay Vic. Napaagang pag-maintenance. Diba? Fish oil and camo white. Diba? Okay. Product ni Ma'am Ayan yan. Ayan. So, yan ang key. Now, the point is, forcing us to think, actually, we learn better. We deeper learning ang nangyayari. So, when penning it down, how do we do that? Diba? We always start with the outcome. So when you're this is applicable in paperworks and documentations as well as projects and meetings. So when you're starting with something, you can't be attentive to details if you don't know what the outcome is. So right off the bat, kailangan malinaw what we want to accomplish. Whether it's a meeting or whether you're writing a documentation, maging malinaw. Activities are not accomplishment. You can be busy and be unproductive. Yes? So, the idea is you start with the end in mind. Kaya ang mga meetings sumahaba at nawawala ng sense kasi hindi malinaw right from the start. Ano bang gusto nating ma-accomplish? Kasi marami tayong pag-uusapan eh. Sigurado yun. Pero, it should go and it should end up accomplishing something, whether it's a project or it's a meeting. So, you start with that outcome and in VNT format, verb, number, task. What do we want to accomplish at this meeting or this paper? You create your outline, this paperwork, this documentation. Because when I do this, as I mentioned, when I was preparing for my deck, napapansin ko na naliligaw ako ng kasi ang dami kong gustong sabihin. Pero I always go back to the objective. Ano ba ang end game? That's why we remind everyone always at the start of this session, the purpose is to install DNA principles that scale organization. Something that you can immediately apply to your organization. Every Friday, 10 a.m., we remind you that this is the reason why we're doing this. You can take one idea that you can immediately, the keyword is immediately apply to your organization. So you write down the outline after coming up with an outcome. And then ito lang naman, usually ang ginagamit ko, if you go back the past messages that I've created, it always, umiikot yan, merong what, may definition to create alignment. Kasi mahirap mag-uusap ako, magsasalita ako rito, hindi naman pala iisang diksyonaryo natin, no? So we define at the start what we're talking about, like detail-oriented is thoroughness and care, even in no matter how small. And why, it's very important to know why. Diba? Simon Sinek made a fortune, diba? And impacted a lot of lives with this book. Start with why. Why is this important? No? And then the how. That's where our difference comes in. Most webinars, most webcasts, they talk about the what and the why, the principles. They show you how smart they are. And that's okay, Well, me, I'm all about how do you apply this. That's why hindi mawawala ang getting practical sa mga Friday talks natin. There's always that getting practical section. Kasi for me, the idea is you'll take home at least 1, 2, 3, okay na yon. Diba? But at least one you can take home na magagamit mo agad. Hindi yung parang pag-iisipin ka pa. So this is something that you can immediately apply in your organization. So those are the outlines. Okay, whether you're preparing for paperwork and documentation or you're preparing for a project or a meeting or a strategy, you always begin with the outcome. It's in VNT format. Next, if you're in the, segue muna tayo konti, if you're in the documentation, proofread. Okay. When you say proofread, it's about reading it. Write down what you want to say. May outcome ka na. Write down what you want to say. And then read it, And it's called shitty first draft, SFD. Yeah, it's shitty. It's a first draft. It's supposed to be shitty. So it's okay. Diba? So write down, importante, malatag natin kung ano yung nasa isip natin sa papel. Read it. Refine it, read it again, refine it, proofread it multiple times. And then the third one, ask others to read it. We're in the middle of writing a book, another coming collaboration with Jason De La Rosa, the mentor and the advisor, Faith Family Firm, in that order. And I've already shared some of the draft na meron tayo to others. So may mga iba naka-sneak peek na nung laman na yon. So that I can improve it, so that we can improve it. So ask others to read. And we want to share it not to learn, not to validate kung ano yung nandun. Diba? What do we ask? Diba? What's working? What did you like most in this write-up? What's missing? What's confusing, di ba? Ano yung hindi malinaw, di ba? And last but not the least, how can I make it better? Ito yung, I read this, I believe in Insanely Simple. Kasi, naman, Steve Jobs is like a mercurial. He doesn't like idiots. Sabi niya nga, no bozo zone ang Apple. No? And for him, when you ask something, so ang ginawa niya, ang nakita niya, discover niyang technique is, I asked Steve Jobs to learn. No? So natatap niya si Steve Jobs. So pag pinesent niya isang bagay, instead of Steve Jobs saying, this is idiotic, he would say, please help me make it better. So instead of judging, you turn the person you're talking to as a co-learner, as an advisor. And imagine having Steve Jobs as your advisor, right? So how can I make it better? So those are the questions that we ask, right? So the third one, if it's going to be a project, a strategy, or whatever, there's a process. And when we say process, we co-design. Okay? And co-design is a word that I love to use. If you're familiar with Linus Torvalds, okay, he's the, for geek people, kilala nila to. He's the father of Linux system, the father of open source. And he is known as the originator of the Linus law. It says there, many eyes make all bugs shallow. What do we mean by that? It means that in the open source, the more that you put your work out there, the more eyes can see it, the more eyes can immediately criticize or help it make better, help it become better, yung program na isa-send mo. So mas maraming mata nakakakita, mas mabilis nakikita kung saan yung problema. That's the Linus law. No? And that's why I'm a sucker for transparency. Kasi it works both ways. For me, if I know that my work will be out in the open, it forces me to become much more attentive to details. Kasi I don't want to throw in there na basura yon, di ba, out in the open. I want it to be, pag nilagay ko ron, medyo okay naman na, di ba? Medyo okay naman na. And that's the beauty of transparency. The second thing is, in the event na may makalusot yun, again, there's no such thing as perfect document. That's why si Coach Hyde is here. Six Sigma, it's 3.4 defects per million. There will be defects. Pero the idea is to minimize it to 3.4. Yun yung Six Sigma. Right? So the idea is, kung may makalusot man dun sa akin, maraming mata ang makakakita at makokorek ka agad yun. Why just focus on us? Having that, that focusing on our own effort when we can tap others. So, co-design, and then when you're co-design, present it, and then ask for specifics. If you're my friend and you're following me, you know that I volunteered for an organization. I'm not gonna mention na lang kung ano yan, but you know that. And when I was being briefed as a new volunteer, may mga jargons, diba? ACS, CMs, mga ganon. So I can play the smart guy, okay, even though I don't know what that is. Or I can be the idiot and ask, what do you mean by that? Kasi I really don't know. Ano yung CMs, Ano yung mga ACMs? Yung mga VCs, yung mga ganun, yung mga acronyms. So we have to be specific. The key to execution, lalo na sa corporate strategy, is drilling down the conversation to the specifics. That's how you have robust discussion. Para malinaw talaga, hindi pwedeng, we're gonna accomplish this next month or in 2 months' time. No, when in 2 months' time? Diba? Who does what by when? And I was working with the CEO. Sabi niya, I'm deciding this to the marketing team. Sino sa marketing team? Lagyan mo ng pangalan. Kailan mo kailangan? Diba? You have to really ask for the specifics of the process or the strategy so that mas malinaw siya. Diba? And then think in steps because it's easier to drill for the specifics if there's steps. Like for example, step 1, ito, step 2, ito. If you can connect the two steps, then you can now ask for specific. You can be attentive to detail. Now, I don't see the connection. Diba? Ano yung connection ng step 1 to step 2? Until they were able to explain it fully. Yes? Ayan, so medyo malalim. Sorry naman. I still have time. Okay lang ba mag-extend ng konting-konti lang? Right, medyo na-miss ko kayo eh. Bigay nyo na sa akin to, di ba? Ayan. Alright, closing na ako. Closing. In closing, in summary, there. So, pen it down. Write it down. Proofread it. And proofread it again and ask others to read it with you. Then third, process it together. Go design together, present it, and then ask for specifics. Okay. So our focus for this month is being methodical. We're closing this series. We're starting a new one next month. It's a 5-week series. So may guest faculty tayo on the 5th month. Kinontrata ko na yon. Diba? Alam niya na yon. At andito siya ngayon. Okay, so methodical is about manifesting an insatiable drive to be better. We want to get better constantly. That's the kind of culture we have here at the CEO Insights Asia ecosystem. That's the kind of people in this Zoom meeting right now and the people watching. Right? So methodical, we talk about the system of systems. To improve and get better, there has to be a system that's documented. So we can update it. Hindi pwedeng ang system nasa utak lang natin. We can improve that. Diba? Pero pag nakasulat yun, then we can improve it. We want to obsess, we don't love performance. We don't like it. We are obsessed in performance. And for us to perform, the easiest way is to have a checklist. Kasi talagang sure ball yan, you'll get things done. And it starts, that's why the title is a checklist CEO. It starts with us. The team is who the leader is. If we're not doing checklist, we can't expect others to do checklist. We can't enforce it. So the checklist CEO. Last week, we talked about walking the talk. All the ideas are in the head. That's good. But, it's all talk until we do it. We actually execute it. We walk the talk. Maraming idea dyan, but you have to execute it. And now we're talking about the devil in detail. So my question nga kanina, kung napansin nyo, kung talaga kayong keen to detail, there was a mistake kanina. And if you know the mistake sa aking presentation, kindly write it down kung nakita nyo yon. If not, hindi nyo nakita yon. So we need to improve in our capability to be attentive to details. So dun sa mga hindi nakakaalam, Ma'am Chris, ikaw na mag-chat kung ano yung mali sa aking presentation kanina. Okay, I'll show it. Now, it's all about immersing in details. Okay, so I mentioned pen it down, proofread, and process. Let's add, devil in details yung title. Yeah. Okay, so I'm adding a 4th one, which is people. For us to get better in being attentive to details, we have to be surrounded with people who think and operate the same way. So this is where the CEO circle comes in. This is where the action is actually. Okay to principles of scaling. You can read it. You can watch it again sa Facebook Live. Congratulations, hello sa inyo. But this is really where the action is. Having fellow CEOs share their learnings, and we are the sum of the 5 people we hang out with. Kaya mga sinasamahan natin, sila Coach Ayet, sila BK, diba? Sila Steve C, sila Jason. Because we want to be Kim Store, diba? Steve C, Steve Benitez, yan, diba? So that's the kind of people we want to be. Hats off kay Steve C, no? Matindi ang details. Diba? Ayaw paawat. Yan. So you want to be surrounded with people who share the same values as we are. And ang objective natin or the goal is to... Sorry, Asian Cutie, shout out. Diba? We want to impact 50 CEOs by April 30. And people are saying, "Well, we're 8 here." How it's a moonshot. That's not actually quite true because we have the numbers. Last week we're 14. And I was sharing this to Chris, to RD. Sabi ko, we were 14 last week, and padagdag tayo na padagdag every week when we started to focus on circles. And the strategy is, if just one CEO will invite a fellow CEO on Tuesday at 11 a.m., that 14 will become 28. And if that 28 CEOs invite one, on the second week of April, we're already 56. So it's not a moonshot. It is possible. And imagine we're impacting already 14 businesses. Because to change an organization is the best way to change an organization is for the leaders to lead the change. And that's what we do in the circles. We influence one another, infuse ideas that build lasting companies. And imagine, in third week, if that 56 invites one, we're already 100. Invite one. It all needs to invite one. And you're not, hindi lang naman isang CEO kakilala natin. I'm sure, right? We have many CEOs in our network. So be part of the conversation. So here's my closing quote, and I'll open the floor for 5 minutes lang ako extension. I'm sorry. Ito ang closing quote ko. Great things are simply outcomes of excellence in the smallest of things. Great things is an outcome. How? Being excellent in the smallest of things. Eventually it builds up, and then we build something that is really great.